Welcome back, Breakaway Wealth. I'm your host, Jim Oliver, and with me today, I have Dee Hutchins. Dee, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to be with you, Jim.
Awesome, and I'm really, as we were talking, getting ready for the show, tell us a little bit about yourself, but also I love your town's claim to fame because I would have never known that. And so tell us a little bit about it yourself, Dee.
Sure. We'll start off with the town. I live in Hodgeville, Kentucky. I've been here with my wife, and we raised two children here. Been here about 21 years. And it's the birthplace of Abraham Lincoln. So a lot of people, a lot of different states claim Lincoln, like Indiana and Illinois, but he started right here. And so even though it only has two stoplights, it does have some historical significance. But what drew me here 21 years ago was I was traveling around coaching basketball. Anybody that's in the coaching business knows you end up moving a little bit. And so I started off as a small college assistant coach, and then moved into high school head coaching. And so I coached at three different schools here in Kentucky. And this was my last stop doing that. Well, while I was here, I was let go as the coach back in 2005. And it was kind of a, what you call one of those, watershed moments of your life, and that I had in my mind that I was going to be a coach for a long time.
Yeah.
But what I really wasn't thinking about was maybe the Lord was preparing me for something else, something bigger. And in my heart, really, I was more of a teacher / coach. I was just all coach, and I didn't really appreciate my teaching job. I was actually the department chair, and I taught AP, Advanced Placement, U.S. History. And when the coaching was gone, I started looking at some other things. And one thing that happened for me, I became an adjunct professor of history at a small university here in Kentucky, and just did that on the side. And then my brother taught me into getting into business with him. And my brother had been in the storage building business. He sold Amish and Mennonite sheds for several years. And that led us to start a company called America's Buildings. We started that in 2005, where we basically connected Amish and Mennonite storage builders with Lowe's, which is a Fortune 50 company. And we were the middleman. We would do the training and different things. And so we basically ended up very quickly being in several states and over 300 stores. And so I was doing that. That was my side gig, my own quote unquote business, where I was in control, and big things are going to happen through that. The business is still viable today. My brother and I have stepped away from having a major role in the company, but with that said, that was kind of my idea at that time about how to really get ahead financially, was to own my own business. And so, but mainly my background, which is what your main question was, I spent most of my life as a teacher / professor, small college, high school basketball coach. So I would say teacher and coach. I'm an elder in a Christian church. I serve on several boards, mission groups, one in Indiana and one here in Kentucky. And like I said, I have a wife. Both my children are now out of the house. My daughter is married, has a little grandbaby now, or we have a grandbaby. And then my son is a diver in the United States Navy.
Wow. That reminds me of that movie. What was that movie with Cuba Gooding Jr.? That was a good movie, but a tough position to be a diver in the Navy, right?
What's funny is that young man, that person in the movie, was born about 10 minutes where I'm sitting.
Really?
In Sonora, Sonora, Kentucky.
Wow. Every time I talk to somebody from Kentucky, I spent most of my life not knowing how beautiful Kentucky is. In the last probably 7 or 8 years, I own a business in Louisville, and then we have an office there in Louisville for CreateTailwind. And I'll tell you what, Kentucky is a hidden gem. I don't know if all these people from the Northeast and California are moving to Kentucky like they are Florida, but hopefully you guys can stay a secret as long as possible.
It is pretty here. There's a lot of, as you say, hidden in the mountains, a lot of natural rock arches and caves. And there's just a lot of people do come in from Ohio and Indiana and spend a lot of time with an area called the Red River Gorge. It's part of the Daniel Boone National Forest. And so that area does get over 1 million visitors a year from that, mainly those 2 or 3 states.
Wow. So I love that, I coached baseball, football, and wrestling for about 20 years. And I really think that coaching, I loved it, man. I loved when we lived in a pretty small town south of Denver, and, you'd go to the grocery store and, you'd see kids that you'd coached, and, kids would come up to you and they'd come up to me and say, man, I'll tell you what, our practices were so much harder than when I went to the next level or whatever. So it was like, I was prepared for that, or, hey, you told me that if I didn't learn the plays, I wasn't going to play or something. And you made, whatever it is, that you made some change in them. And coaching is, I think, one of the most rewarding jobs that you can have. There's very few of them that are highly paid rewarding jobs, right? But with like youth and, high school and whatever sports, but when you start to say, how do I take those skills and transfer it into the business world, there's that leap for you going from being a coach where you're an employee and you're a professor, and this is where your education and your training and your experience, that jump to business owner, that had to be a pretty interesting moment, a lot of interesting prayers and introspection to do that.
Well, here's what I would tell you. The skill set that we learned through teaching and really, and mainly coaching, I think it's a combination of both. I don't see this as through as many teachers as I do through teachers and coaches, but the skill set of being able to deal with a lot of different people from different socioeconomic backgrounds is a very valuable skill set. Being able to communicate and deal with people, and it can be monetized in big ways, as you all know. And so when I transitioned into business, going out and dealing with people at the Lowe's stores and things like that, whether it be management or the person on the floor or whatever, was pretty easy. I enjoyed that part. The tough part, the main lesson that I learned from starting the Lowe's business was, partnerships. Partnerships can be tough at times. And so we had a 4-person partnership. It was my brother and I, and then a husband and wife. And we were all friends and still are today. But we ran into when 2008, 2009 came rolling in, and sales took a little bit of a decline. And none of us were using this money to live with. It was all extra. We all had income coming in where we could, live normal lives, but we were trying to obviously build it up. And so we started assessing the time we were putting in, and we made the determination, my brother and I did, that we could take on a little bit more of the burden, especially the administrative stuff. And we had hired 2 people to work for us, and they happened to be relatives of the husband and wife. So when it came time to make some business decisions as far as cutting back maybe their hours and us taking on more of the burden to keep, to make our time investment worthwhile, they wanted nothing to do with that. And so it became a dilemma. What do we do? I mean, there's, 2 want to do this and 2 want to do that. We're partners, and we couldn't see eye to eye. And this went on for about a year. And so that was why my brother and I eventually just decided to step away, and allow them to go ahead and continue. And like I said, we remained friends, and it was a great lesson as far as partnerships goes.
Yeah, that's a lesson that you learn, I think, in every business. It doesn't take very long. I think of a business partner that I have. He's an engineer. That's really not the details are not my strength. And you could, there's times where he wants to go this way and I want to go this way. And to be a good partner, you either have to get to here somewhere in the middle, right? Or you can't be partners. And it's interesting because being in partnership with somebody, you're really in a relationship where you're going to be challenged at times, just like any relationship. You're going to have hard times, you're going to have good times, but that not making sure, it's kind of like in your marriage, you got to make sure that the relationship is never in jeopardy, right? So you can argue, you can disagree, but as long as you can communicate about it, and sometimes you get your way and sometimes you give in, I think that makes a good partner. But those are things that you learn also kind of in coaching and sports, is not everybody gets to play quarterback or point guard. I'm not, I don't know that much about basketball, but I guess, that's not everybody gets to be the main guy on the field, right? Or on the court.
That's an awesome point. And it goes back to, my brother and I, we were making a decision based on business and trying to eliminate emotion. Whereas our partners, they were emotionally attached to the people they had hired because they were relatives.
Yeah.
So they couldn't distinguish. So as a coach, yeah, there were times when I had players that I really, really liked. They were really, really good kids.
Yeah.
They just weren't getting to play as much. And I could not allow my emotions of liking them to put them on the floor and take somebody else's spot that deserved it more. It's about, my job was to win basketball games. And so, I always put the best players in the best positions I thought they needed to be in. And, the emotion has to stay out of it.
It has to be that way in business too. But, Dee, one of the reasons that I coached wrestling and I loved coaching wrestling because you never have to make those decisions, is those decisions are made for you, right? If you got two wrestlers and one guy thinks he's better than the other guy and he doesn't think he's, that's fine. No problem. We can solve this in less than 10 minutes. Right. Exactly. This is going to be solved. There's not going to be a question. And you know what, if you think 2 weeks from now that, that you still aren't getting a fair shake, we'll do it again. Right. And you just have them wrestle.
Some of my listeners, even though I coached basketball, wrestling was very popular, very, competitive at our school.
Yeah.
And I have maintained friendships with at least 3 former wrestlers from our school. Really, really respect, that experience was very good for them in high school.
Yeah. 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 So again, there's so many things in life that you can take the analogies of sports. And so along the way, we read something, we listen to something, there's a sermon at church or something that just sticks with us, right? Or changes the direction of our lives. I mean, so tell me, there was a book that you read that kind of just changed everything for you. Well, I mean, outside of the Bible, but I mean, like written by humans.
Well, yeah, actually, like I had a professor that asked me to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then it was in probably the, I guess, later 90s before I actually read it. And it kind of made sense. I like some of the things that was in there and then later on, I ended up reading the cash flow quadrant. And then in just the people that were around me at that time, kind of that my understanding of things was starting to sort of move where I say the light bulb was going off for myself and then my wife, where we started discussing, hey, the way we're playing this game, the way we've been taught to play, we're really not winning. We're just kind of getting by. And we were people that, when we all compare ourselves to the people around us, but like in our town, our church and things like that, we were some of the more quote unquote, people that had it together. I was just happy, pat myself on the back because I was paying my bills. I had no credit card debt and I had a mortgage, of course, but compared to most people, we were doing pretty well financially as far as managing what we had, but we were still just treading water. We weren't really getting ahead and really this is biblical. We weren't really taking what we had and multiplying it, finding ways to take the money or the resources, the time, whatever we have been given, and getting more out of that.
Matthew 25:17, right?
We weren't taught that, it's not something that's taught in school. And I mean, not to, just so the folks listening know, I mean, even though I'm in Kentucky, I've got this accent, it's like here, I've got some experiences. It's like, here's what was, I'm gonna say this humble, and I'm gonna say it also about letting people know things I've experienced. I mean, I was in the United States Navy. I was in there for 4 years. I've got graduate hours from Harvard and Clemson. I've been around the block. I've traveled a lot. I've spoken in different parts of the world, places like Thailand, Hong Kong, Tokyo, on health stuff. But I'm saying with all these experiences, I was in my early 40s before I started really to realize that I'd never been taught properly as far as, taking what I have and doing more with it. And there were people right here in the United States that were doing that successfully. And I'd never been exposed to them. And I was really kind of upset about it because I was like, why wasn't I taught these things when I was much younger? And kind of like we were discussing before, with health, it was kind of the same thing with health. I was interested in taking really good care of myself physically, but I'd never really been taught properly how to drink water, how to sleep, how to exercise, how to eat right. You know,
Right.
I just kind of picked up, as most people do, tidbits of information here and there, and you try to cobble it together in your mind and make the best of it, and you think you're winning. You know, I read this article in Men's Health, and they said to do this, or hey, I read one of my friends has a broker that said to invest in this, and it's like everybody plays this game of little bitty pieces of things coming at them. They don't really know exactly how to decipher it, and then they make these decisions, and most of the time it ends up not being too good.
You know, Dee, you bring up a great point. One of the things that when I'm just kind of doing an overview, we're talking about money with people, and that's kind of what we do every day is coaching and educating people on how money really works, what's really going on out there. But I use the analogy of Monopoly, right? And Monopoly is a game that's pretty simple game, but we're taught to play it to have fun. And so if we're taught to play it to have fun, normally if you and I were playing with some other people, we'd look around the board and see who has the most money on the side of the board. And we think that's who's winning the game, right? Because that's what we were taught. Well, it's all about cash. It's all about the money that you're holding on to that you have, right? And you talk about the Bible talking about what are we supposed to do with our money. We're supposed to put our money in motion and multiply it, not bury it in the dirt, right? And so, which is, stagnant and it's dying in the dirt. So, and by the way, the dirt can be a bank, it can be in mutual funds or whatever. If it's not moving, it's dying. And so we're taught to play this game the wrong way. And there's only one rule of Monopoly that matters, and that's 4 houses equal a hotel. Because it doesn't matter what properties I own. If I put hotels on those properties, whether it's boardwalk or whether it's one of the lower end properties, I'm going to bankrupt the other players, take their properties, I'm going to win. But they're playing to have fun, I'm playing to win. And in life, there are people that are playing to have fun, which is the 99 point whatever majority. And then there's 1% or less that are playing to win. And to break away from that 99% herd and get into the 1% who is actually playing to win, whether it's money, whether it's health, whatever it is. And I want to get into this health thing because I want to know what you discovered, because, I love that you said, hey, I discovered something, or I studied something. And, we've talked a lot about the cash flow quadrant and understanding. People can criticize Robert Kiyosaki all day long, but here's the thing, is his system and things that he's talking about work. And in an inflationary environment, which we have, and it's going to get worse, is assets grow with inflation and you're in control. Reducing our taxes help us win the game. And if our thing is we're just chasing a higher rate of return, or we're just saying, well, everybody else is playing by this game, so we're all going down together. If that's our attitude, well, we might as well dig a hole and crawl in it, because we're done. And so I love that, what you've done and everything else. But I want to talk about, because we talk a lot about money and breaking away. And it's funny, because I was riding my bike at 5 o'clock this morning in the dark down Highway 41. Anybody that knows Florida, like Southwest Florida, normally you would think you would never ride your bike. I would never do it right now at whatever time of morning it is. But at 5 o'clock in the morning, there aren't a lot of cars out there, right? And so, but I was riding my bike thinking, all I need to do is do this every day. And I'm listening to Brian Buffini's podcast. And he said, out of all the people that come into the ER, 90% of them are dehydrated. And I thought, what's my wife constantly telling me to do? Drink more water, Jim, drink more water. And I'm just never thirsty, and I'll ask her, is Coors Light? I mean, it's basically water, right? Does that count? No, I'm only messing with her, but, talk about that, talk about breaking away health-wise. And I don't think people really think about sleep. My wife's a type 1 diabetic, and last night at 1:30 in the morning, her alarm on her glucose monitor goes off. Well, when it goes off, then I'm like, she didn't hear it somehow because she's used to the noise, right? And then I'm thinking, is it going to go back up? When's it going to go back up? Is she okay? Can we go back to sleep? And, you know, and everything else. And so that disrupts your sleep a lot. And it's personally, it's my excuse to go when it's 5 o'clock in the morning and I go, well, maybe I should just sleep for another 30 minutes instead of working out or going on a bike ride or doing whatever. So talk about that a little bit, Dee.
Sure, I'll keep it as concise as I can. And one of the things that I've tried to do with this information that you're talking about, these, by the way, these are the 4 pillars of health. These are the things that we all have to do, or we're bringing the problems on ourselves. So you just mentioned water and sleep. The other 2 would be exercise and nutrition. So water, there's not an exact amount everyone needs, but there's a general consensus. I always reference the Mayo Clinic. The Mayo Clinic recommends 9 to 13 cups a day. 9 is a starting point for an adult female. So that's 9 times 8 would be 72 ounces. 72 ounces is a lot of water. Yeah. As you just said, the ER doctor saying 90% of people that come in are dehydrated. Most Americans are grossly dehydrated. Okay. So I was around sports most of my life and I was never taught to drink water properly. People just kind of drank when they felt like it. And I remember my dad saying early on, he said, 8 glasses a day, which is actually a good guideline. 8 times 8 ounces would be 64 ounces. If you're getting 64 ounces a day, you're doing very well. But most people are probably getting less than 20. That's kind of been my experience traveling around and talking to people. And so what's the big deal about water? Well, you need it for proper respiration or breathing. You need it for absorption of anything that you eat that's worth anything. For your body to absorb it well, you need water. But the biggest thing is releasing metabolic waste. Your body has to have, it's like a lubricant. Your body has to have the lubricant for you to do, obviously urinating. That makes sense logically, or sweating. But also number 2, to defecate properly, you have to have water hydration. Water actually goes into the colon and helps you to evacuate yourself. So many people are literally holding on, no pun intended, to things they don't want to hold on to because they just don't hydrate properly. But to get people's attention, I always used to share, and this is what got my attention, there are some side effects that pop up if you don't hydrate properly. Number 1 is headaches. Number 2 is fatigue. So I never would have thought logically that having a headache or being tired had anything to do with water. Right. I thought it had to do maybe with sleep. I'm tired, I haven't got enough sleep. Well, no. If many people are walking around in this country, literally there's probably hundreds of thousands into the millions of people dealing with in this country on a daily, weekly basis, having a headache or being tired or both, all because no one ever taught them how to drink water properly. And there's really no cost to water. It's very nominal. You can almost say it's almost like free. That's how cheap it is. And people just don't know how powerful it is. It's a requirement. Sleep is, and by the way, a lot of people ask, everybody wants to lose weight these days, like how to lose weight. Well, guess what? Water is a major factor in weight. First thing, if somebody asked me about losing weight, I said, well, how much water are you drinking? How are you sleeping? Sleep's a major factor in weight. Okay. So the consensus on sleep's much more exact. As adults, we need 7 to 8 or 7 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep. 7 to 8 or 7 to 9. So when I talk to people, many times they're getting 5.5 hours a night. And so when you're getting less than 7, and the farther away from that you get, or if it's interrupted, here's how it can impact your health. You're more prone to, you call that chronic lack of sleep. You're just doing it over and over again, chronic lack of sleep. You're more prone to heart attack, heart disease, high blood pressure, stroke, diabetes. It ages your skin. It will kill your sex drive. It will make you function as though you're inebriated. It can cause anxiety and depression. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. One of the great sources, when you talk about, I know probably a lot of your listeners read, a lady named Arianna Huffington. She does the Huffington Post. She's written a lot of books, and whether you like her politically or not, it's irrelevant in this particular topic. She fell asleep, or not fell asleep, but she fell over in a hotel room and broke her cheek on the corner of a table a few years ago. She was at the doctor being treated for this, and she had written and answered questions in her chart, and the doctor's looking at her chart, and he said, Arianna, you're sleep deprived. He says, I'm reading here where you say you get 5 hours a night of sleep. She's like, well, you don't have to worry about that. I'm here to get my cheek fixed. And he's like, well, no, you're sleep deprived. That's probably why you fell over and broke your cheek. So she gets treated. Well, she decides she's going to go out and prove this doctor's wrong. Because here's the way she was thinking. I'm highly educated. I'm a world traveler. I rub elbows with some of the smartest people on the planet, and nobody's talking about how to sleep. she thought she could discipline herself, train herself to get by with 5 hours a night because she had so many things to do. She was just too busy. Well, what she found was, we started to do just a little research. She found out the doctor was right. She was wrong. She was sleep deprived. And so she wrote a book called The Sleep Revolution by Arianna Huffington. And all it does is discuss how powerful a good night's sleep is for our overall health. Now she promotes sleep to her staff and anybody that she comes in contact with. So here was a highly educated world traveler, successful lady that was completely ignorant of how to take care of herself from a sleep standpoint. Then you move to exercise, and I've been around exercise, been active my whole life, but I didn't know there was kind of a minimum effort to make every week to get the most out of our bodies. It involves really three things. Number one is walking. We're supposed to get so many steps in, and there's not an exact amount. Some people say, 10,000 a day. That came out of Japan. There's nothing necessarily scientific about that, but in my reading and understanding, it's about 3 to 4 miles a day. And that's just throughout the day, we get enough steps to equal that. And what does that do? That lowers your blood pressure and keeps your blood sugar from spiking after meals, two very important things. And so besides that, we're supposed to do some vigorous cardio every week. And the recommendation's about 90 minutes a week for vigorous cardio, get your heart rate up. And then lastly is resistance training. And this is where a lot of people fall down. Resistance mean it could be anything that, like a push-up or a sit-up or bands or yoga moves, weights, of course, anything causes resistance. And what does this do? This builds up bone density. And this, especially as we age, to avoid things like osteoporosis, for example, just a very important thing. So many people don't do any resistance training, and then we end up having a lot of problems later on in life because of that. So those are the three main areas that we're supposed to be doing. And in resistance training, it's only, the minimum's like 30 minutes a week. So it's not a lot. So that's the minimum effort. And right now, between only about 15 to 20% of Americans are meeting that minimum effort every week. And I talk to people, I speak in gyms. My wife and I do CrossFit, but I speak in gyms and hospitals and things around the country. And when I talk about this, I run into people that, I'm a runner, and my wife was a runner, and I've run with my wife some, but like marathons, half marathons, that kind of stuff. But it's like, well, what kind of resistance training are you doing? Well, not really anything, but I'm a runner, and they got this Forrest Gump mentality. As long as they're running, that just, their bodies are going to be just like they want them to be. And, we're not going to get into running, but I'm saying there's some negative things to running too much, and you're missing out. You're not really doing a kind of a balanced way or a balanced approach to your overall health. And then lastly is nutrition. And that's the most difficult of the four, because the first three are basically free, and most people stink at those three. Nutrition's worse because it requires a serious investment of money and an effort on your part to know what to buy, how to prepare it, to make sure you're fueling your body with the proper nutrients. And so that's the one that's the most difficult, and the one that, I would spend time, talking to people and trying to share some ideas. And again, I try to make it as simple as I possibly can. I'm not trying to, convert you into a nutritionist or, a dietitian, anything like that. And there's so much noise out there on all these subjects, really, well, especially exercise and nutrition, that, people just have been bamboozled so much that they really don't know what to believe and who to look to. And it's not that complicated, but some people it's a complicated subject.
So you just said something that I was thinking is, it's kind of like, what do, if you Google nutrition books, right, you're going to get the keto, the paleo, the, balanced, you're going to get vegan, now there's something vegan, it's like all these different things, right? And it's like, okay, again, my wife being diabetic, she's tried a lot of these different things because she eats healthy, and she eats clean, and she eats things that aren't pumped full of chemicals and things like that. But it's like, when she did keto, she got down to like 112 pounds, right? It was really skinny for her, and didn't feel very good. Then, then paleo, then people keep searching, and then they go, I don't know what the heck works. So what's a book, or what would you recommend people do to really educate themselves on that?
Well, not necessarily a particular book. I would just say this, from a nutrition standpoint, and I've talked to, people with, PhDs and stuff, all, read things. And I always say this in a simple format. And you just described it perfectly, how people are searching for answers, and they'll try this and they'll try that. And sometimes anything that relates to a diet where you're denying yourself something or cutting something out, like many diets will cut out fats and carbs. Well, you need fats and carbs and protein. So you need to eat a balanced diet. And what I would tell people is just eat real food.
Right.
And sadly, Jim, many people don't know what real food is. They can't really define it many times. I mean, it's fruits and vegetables and greens and grains and nuts and real fish and real chicken and things like that. And I'll be honest, it's sometimes it's hard to find good quality fish and chicken, beef, things like that hasn't been, adulterated, unfortunately. I remember going to Asia and seeing chickens over there. They're about this big, and over here they look like turkeys. And why they look like turkeys? Well, they're pumped full of stuff. It's like, that's the chicken should be about like this, not like this. And it's like, we just get so used to things. I had a friend that came over from overseas, and he was like, man, how do you he said, you go to the grocery and all your tomatoes look exactly the same and all your oranges look exactly the same. He said, in my country, he said, you might have a tomato that's got a big, growth out the side of it. And he said, they still look good. They're different sizes. I mean, everything's, we've just made it. It's like a food process. And even though we're eating real things, sometimes even some of that has human hands on it in some ways that aren't the best for us. Yeah. But eating real food and eating a big variety of it, that's the tough part.
Yeah.
When I say a variety, I've had people say eat, 20 to 30 different fruits and vegetables, for example, every day. Right. That's very difficult to do. And so, finding ways, finding foods and ways of supplementing and giving our bodies the things that it needs is a real chore. And so, but it's worth it. Something everybody should strive for that.
Absolutely. It's funny when you said the thing about the chickens, because this is just how my brain works, Dee, is we'll go to like Fresh Market or something, and their chickens are like this big, like say they're rotisserie chickens or something. They're like this big, right? And I'm like, why would I pay $8 for that when I go to Costco and I get a chicken this big for $5? And my wife, she will, she won't eat the one from Costco. And I'm like, in my head, hey, that's a better bargain, but I know I'm thinking about it wrong. So I'm always just so focused on, am I getting a good deal for my money, and everything. And she buys all organic stuff and everything else. And she just kind of, when she goes to Costco, she'll get me one of those chickens, because then I'll have it for lunch, and then it sits in the refrigerator and I forget about it.
Look, let me share one example about when you talk about breaking away and breaking away from the mindset and the things we've been taught. We have been bamboozled, fooled, pulled in so many ways. It's really, if I think about it long enough, I want to bite through nails. Let me give you an example. I've got a holistic doctor friend out west, and he was speaking one time, and he's one of these guys, he's in his 60s, very fit, but he's one of these guys that tries to, he's about truth. He's not about, pumping you full of medications and, killing whatever and moving on. And so he was teaching a subject. He was trying to make a point about how people have been fooled. And he used cholesterol. And he asked a question. He said, how many people here have ever bought some type of product or food that says low cholesterol? And a lot of the hands went up, And he said, do you know that cholesterol in foods has absolutely nothing to do with cholesterol in your blood? Nothing. He said, so going and buying low cholesterol this or that is not going to impact your cholesterol at all. But he goes, guess what does? Sugar. Sugar does. He said, if you want to lower your cholesterol, lower your sugar intake. That's tough. But again, we have people marketing things to us, making us think that we're making these wise decisions, when really, with just a little bit of research, a little bit of knowledge, we would find out that, hey, we better be more serious about what we're buying, what we're putting in our bodies. And when it comes to health, I mean, here's what I would say for those that are struggling with weight or struggling with energy or whatever. If you're going to get yourself lined up health-wise, it starts with your mouth. You can't outrun your fork. So the first thing a lot of people think of is, I got to get to the gym. I got to get to working out. Well, you better get control of your fork before you do some kind of workout program. And you can do both at the same time, of course, but working out doesn't give you carte blanche to go out and eat how you want, drink how you want. You've got to get control of your fork. There's no getting around that.
That's a great point. That's a great point, Dee. I feel like we could do a whole series of podcasts just on that subject, because there's so many people out there, myself included, that, you know, with that last comment that you have, I always think when I was really riding my bike and I'd ride like an hour and a half a day, and I look at the calories I'm burning, I'm like, oh man, I can go have those tacos today. I can go have and so I definitely fall into that trap. Um, Dee, what are you mentioned the cash flow quadrant, and you also mentioned that you're a leader at your church. So outside the Bible and the cash flow quadrant, what are some books that you would recommend that maybe made a big difference in your life that you'd recommend everybody read?
One for sure, it's a great starter book for people that are getting into, personal development, is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy.
Love that book. Yep.
Yeah. Another book that is real similar is The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson.
Yep.
Both of those are great books to kind of get people's mindsets to just thinking a little differently about things, maybe how to approach life. And then that just leads into, when you start down that journey of reading and listening to good words, you'll find those people that are out there that that speak to you. I have a lot of younger friends and associates today that they listen to a lot of podcasts and things, and they have some people in their generation they like listening to that. When I mentioned somebody like Jim Rohn, for example, who had a big impact on my life, even though I never met him, he's been gone since 2009. But a lot of the people that they're listening to were influenced by Jim Rohn, but they like listening to things on the go. And many people don't like cracking a book open, but I try to encourage a lot of these younger folks that I talk to and mentor. I think it's still important to crack open a book, because I was taught to read the book, but as I'm reading, to underline things that stand out to me. Then when I get done, I go back and I reread all the underlined parts, and then I'm taught to take notes on the most important things I think from the underlined parts that I can actually apply. So, I've got books in here on the shelves that I've read, but what I've tried to do, instead of reading just a lot of books, I've tried to read books and extract things from them and then apply them, instead of just saying, hey, I read, 30 books this year. So those two books are great starter books. You mentioned Robert Kiyosaki. Obviously, Rich Dad, Poor Dad's a great book. The Business of the 21st Century that he wrote, which kind of, with the cash flow quadrant, how my wife and I decided to move from the E and the S side over to the big business and the investment side, was we entered through network marketing in the big business side. And then in the investment side, we got into real estate investing. And so, Kiyosaki doesn't do network marketing, but he promotes it. He says that people that have very little capital can actually get into a business and get a hold of something that's could be very valuable and have a ceiling on it. And my wife and I experienced some great success with that, mainly through sharing the health stuff that I just shared. And then we were able to take some money from that and use it to get into investing in real estate. And our big goal is to control time. And when you control time, as well as I do, money comes and goes, but time does not. And so being able to control that's also a gift, from our Lord. And if you can control it, have better handle on it, then you can serve and do things when you're called and you're needed to go here or do this or that. You're able to say yes to those things. And so, I don't have a job, and neither does my wife, but we're busier now than we've ever been.
Yeah, exactly. Another book that I just started, but I think it's an interesting book, as you said it earlier a couple of times, and this is a book that just came out in January, but it's called Chatter, The Voice in Our Head, Why It Matters, by Ethan Kross. And it's what you tell yourself, right? And probably you mentioned Jim Rohn and the Strangest Secret, and that to me is the greatest recording of all time for personal development, because it's from the 50s. I think it's 30 minutes long. We've done podcasts where we just kind of introduce it and then let it go, right? Because it's so important that I want everybody out there to listen to it. And Nightingale just, to me, that's one of those things that you got to listen to. And Rohn, he's got some stuff on YouTube. So people that weren't exposed to him, like probably you and I were, cassette tapes, or at least I was, cassette tapes back originally, right? And then DVDs and, all of those things. It's what you're putting in your head. But the thing that you also said is, it was a consistent theme, is the noise out there. You got to get away from the noise. I mean, the things that they're telling you how to play the game, whether it's fitness and health, or whether it's money, or whether it's, it's all noise. Telling somebody that every single person should go to college, get a job, work hard. I mean, that's just not it. And I hope that people are waking up and breaking away and saying, if my skill set is to be an electrician or something like that, then the progression is to learn how to be the best electrician, then how to be the best business person, then expand. And, I could do all of that. And for 33 years, I've been working with people with money. And I would tell you, some of my biggest clients, they do not have the formal education, or they're not using their formal education in their current business, meaning they're a history major or something like that. And now, by the way, there are a lot of lessons to learn from that. And I'm not telling you don't go and learn those things. But, one thing I'm just fascinated by is our access to an education. I mean, what you could do for free on the internet. You can learn anything you want to learn for free, right? And something that somebody told me, back to the reading thing, and then I think we'll wrap up here, Dee, but and I love what you said, and actually the guy that told me this was with Amway. So he was a network marketer back in the day. And he told me, he said, Jim, read an hour a day, and within 6 weeks, you'll be an expert on that subject. Right now, I don't know where he got that, but I just started doing it, and it's made all the difference in the world. And I agree with you, that system, because I do that, and I got my journal that that's where I take my notes, and I read the book, highlight it, write the other stuff down there. And then when I do this thing called a strategy circle, when I do the strategy circle, it's from those notes, and then the strategy circle then becomes an implementation plan of whatever subject it is. So, I really, and I love your background. I love the things that you're doing. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, Dee, is there a way for them to do that easily?
Sure. I mean, my email is Dee Hutchins, Hutchins @hotmail.com. And my cell number is 270-304-8810. People can reach out to me anytime. If I can help them in any way or add value to them, and maybe they can add value to me as well, feel free to reach out to me. One thing I would say, and as a coach, another thing that we learned that is so applicable in life is that it's really about mastering the mundane in all areas of our life, meaning find the basic things, the actions that will get you success, and just repeat those over and over again. It's not always exciting, but the results, like my grandfather was a dentist, and I remember when I was in 8th grade, he was filling, I could actually show you fillings he put in here in the late 70s, and they're still there. And he pointed to a poster he had that had some rotten teeth on it. He said, if you don't start taking better care of your teeth, they're gonna look like this. Well, I couldn't relate to that because my teeth didn't look like that right then. I couldn't see how my teeth could ever look like that, falling off, black, all that stuff. And so about a year later, I got a girlfriend. And when I got a girlfriend, I started being more interested in take care of my teeth. So I started flossing and this, that, and the other. So here's the deal. I've been flossing every night for 40 plus years now. And it takes about a minute. I don't like to do it, but I like the result. That though boring 1 minute action of flossing. I'm 56. I still have my original teeth. A lot of my friends are running around with mouths full of, dentures. And I got to say, I don't like doing it, but I learned a lesson from that and that can apply to anything in life, whether it be financial, health, spiritual, relational, whatever, is find the habits that work and then get after them.
That's great advice, and ignore the noise, because as soon as you start doing that, the noise will come to try to knock you off of that, because you're on the path to being successful. Whether it's, I promise you, if you start praying every morning, there'll be things that'll happen that'll try to distract you from doing that. And in my belief system, I know where that's coming from, and you fight it every day because it's a battle, right? But I love that it's the mundane things that make the difference, and it's really taking the action, whether it's money, whether it's whatever it is that you want to learn. It's just taking action and doing it. You think about, I remember the way that I'm about, you and I are about the same age, and when I was a kid, football started 2 weeks before two-a-days, right? Or we had 2 weeks of two-a-days, and then you were having a game, so we never like trained. I always lifted weights and did those things, but like you weren't like in that mode. Now people are like doing it every day. And sometimes when I'm out on my bike, I want to listen to a podcast or whatever, and I think, how do people run? But what I learned is that like today, I only had a 30-minute podcast, and then I was trying to reach my phone to find something else to listen to, some praise music or something else, and I couldn't get it out of the pouch because I forgot I put a jacket on, so it was in my jersey. And I was, again, in my belief system, I said, okay, God, I guess we're gonna just talk. Then I'm just riding my bike. It's quiet, and it's like that moving meditation that's so important too.
Yeah, I mean, we should all have what I call a Start Strong program. And I'm like you. I wake up and I pray, and then I read, and I usually read 30 minutes in the Bible and 30 minutes in some type of personal development or leadership book. But I didn't start off doing that. It took me a while to kind of work into that. But once you start down that journey of personal growth and self-education, you want more and more of it. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, I would have, somebody told me that I would be doing what I'm doing now, 15 years ago, I'd have said, you're crazy. There's no way I could see myself doing what I'm doing. Wouldn't have understood the value of it. But I remember many years ago, Mark Twain, I heard this quote. He said, I never let school get in the way of my education.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand what that was, because as a teacher, as a professor, I'm providing education. That's where you come get it at school. I had no idea what that meant. Now I know what he meant.
Yeah.
Self-education is where it's at. And I've learned more on my own in the last, say, 12 or 13 years than I did in the previous, 43, and not even close.
That's awesome. Somebody told me one time, they were talking about somebody who was having kind of struggling reading their Bible, and their pastor said to them, would you just commit to one thing? Just open your Bible every day and read one word. Can you commit to that? I mean, could you at least give God that? And he goes, well, I mean, how could you say no? Right. I mean, one word. Right. So, the trick to this wise pastor was, you're not going to open your Bible and read one word. Right. And it's like any other habit, you open it up, you start reading, and, it's all of a sudden it becomes a habit. You think, hey, it's first thing in the morning, this is what I do. And so I love that you do that. So Dee, I think I could probably talk to you for hours here. And, people don't listen to podcasts. They tell me for hours. Hopefully everybody hung with us. But any famous last words, anything to add before we wrap it up?
You mentioned, we talked about Jim Rohn. I would just use something that Jim Rohn taught. And that is, he said, work harder on yourself than you do on your job.
Yeah,
he said, if you work hard on your job, you can make a living. If you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. And he's not just talking about financially, he's talking about all areas of your life. And so being somebody that was, had all these different life experiences, no one ever taught me, Jim, how to work on myself. And when I was pushed to do that, and I was I'm in my early 40s, when I was pushed to do that, it changed everything.
Yeah.
Because the blinders came off. I was able to see and understand things that I could not see and understand before. And I prayed for years for wisdom, but I wasn't working to get it.
Right.
That's something you got to get. You can pray for great health, but you have to work to get it.
Yeah.
You can pray for unwavering faith, but you have to work being a disciple, you have to work on these things. And so the wisdom part, I was asking for it, but I wasn't working on it. And so that was really an answered prayer when somebody came into my life and really pushed me to work on myself. And as I said, not to beat a dead horse, but I wish that I'd been taught this stuff at an earlier point in my life.
Yeah.
And that's why I spend some of my time, trying to get around as many young people as I can. And my wife and I do a couples group at church, and we try to share some of these things with people, and try to get them on that path before, too much time goes by.
That's awesome. That's great. And I love that young people are willing to do things differently. That's what I find, is they've been taught one thing about money or one thing about, other things. And they're willing to do something different. And they don't have this 40-year plan that we were taught of, saving money, building up some retirement account that's controlled by the government, and then, stop working and hope that you don't run out of money. The young people aren't doing that. Young people are saying, that doesn't sound like a great plan to me. And we were sold that plan. I honestly never bought into that plan after about my early 30s. And thank goodness I shifted that. But Dee, thank you so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed it. And I'm excited. This is going to come out really quickly here. So thank you so much for your time.
Hey, my pleasure. And it's been good to get to know you a little bit. And maybe we can do this again soon.
Absolutely. All right, Breakaway Wealth. Until next time, if you haven't broken away, you're part of the herd, and nothing good happens in the herd.